This 300mm f4 lens is one of my favourite lenses from my film days, and this 400mm lens f5.6 is one of my favourite lenses now. I know they're both very good optically, so I was quite interested in doing a direct comparison between the two. They have a different focal length and a different maximum aperture, but when you add a 1.4 times converter to the old FD lens, it becomes a 420mm f5.6, and that's quite close to this one, the 400mm f5.6. My original intention was to use the same camera body to do the comparison. I planned to do it on a digital mirrorless camera, but there was a problem. When I connected the old manual focus lens to the digital camera using this adapter, I couldn't change the aperture manually, as I can do with my other manual focus lenses. So every shot is taken at the maximum aperture, and that's not ideal when doing a lens comparison test. In light of this problem, what I decided to do was to use the old manual focus lens on a film body, but this changes the whole nature of the comparison. The lenses are quite similar optically, but there's a huge difference between film and digital sensors. So instead of this video being a comparison between two lenses, what it really is a comparison between film and digital sensors. 20 years ago I went to South Africa, and this is the lens I took for trips into the safari parks, and if I were to go today I'd take this lens, so this is quite a valid comparison between then and now. There's also a lot of mythology today about the magical power of film, so I thought it would be interesting to do a direct comparison between film and digital and let people decide for themselves what looks better. The idea was to keep as much as possible the same. When I'm shooting digitally, I try to stay at ISO 100 to get as much detail as I can. So I went out and bought some ISO 100 film. I used a tripod. The tripod stayed in the same position, and I just changed the camera. So every shot was taken from the same position using the same aperture, and each shot was taken minutes apart, so the lighting is the same, and it was all done on a very bright and sunny day. So I had the cameras in aperture priority mode. I just set the aperture, and then I let the cameras take care of the shutter speed. When I got the film back from the lab, I scanned it in with my Epson V600 and did the processing with Silver Fast scanning software. You can find videos for both of these things on my channel. There was one further complication, and that is when you shoot film, it's full frame. The sensors inside full frame DSLRs have the same 24 by 36mm dimensions as the frames in 35mm film. However, my digital camera has an APS-C sensor, which has a 1.6 times crop factor, and what that does effectively is turn this 400mm lens into a 560mm lens. So what you'll notice in the comparison is that there's more magnification in the shots taken with the digital setup. To be honest, when I started this exercise, I was expecting film to look really bad, but this was the first image I scanned, and I was pleasantly surprised. There's quite good detail, and the colours and contrast look very pleasing. Previously, I'd taken a shot of the same subject using my FD 70-210, and although the sharpness and detail looked fine, the background was completely washed out. That sky should be blue, and it's as white as the Buddha. Here's the same shot taken with the digital setup and the 400mm f5.6 lens. And the first thing you'll notice is the increased magnification because of the crop sensor effect. The sharpness and detail is fine, but if anything, the colours look better with the film version. Here are some more Buddha images taken at the same temple, and the idea of this image was to try and get an idea of the bokeh qualities of the old FD lens. But what I can see is a lot of softness in this image, even on the main part of the subject that I'm focused on. Here's the shot with the digital setup, and you can see there's a lot more sharpness on the main part of the subject. Here's another bokeh shot taken at a different location with different exposure settings, but you can see a similar thing. Even the cat on the left I focused on isn't that sharp. And here you can see the film grain. With a lot of these images I use noise reduction software to remove the grain. But just so you can see how much film grain there is on this shot, I haven't done any noise reduction. Here's the digital version, and to me everything looks better. Shooting at ISO 100 with digital, there's no noise in the image. The colours look a lot more natural. The cat on the left hand side is nice and sharp, and the bokeh quality looks really good. When shooting with a 400mm lens, there's so much magnification that it's quite difficult finding suitable subjects. One obvious subject is birds, but when you're doing a lens comparison test, the problem with birds is that they don't tend to stick around while you're changing cameras and messing around with manual focus. For that reason, I bought a fake hoopoe so that I had a bird subject to shoot that wouldn't fly away. Here's the same shot taken with the digital setup, and as you can see, it's orders of magnitude better in every respect. The sharpness, contrast, colours, everything is better about the digital setup compared to film. Next, I went to some local rice fields to take some landscape shots, and having said that birds never stick around while you take photos of them, I found a couple of Asian openbills who were very happy to stick around while I took photos of them. The only problem was that they were quite far away, and this is taken with the digital setup. It's quite heavily cropped, and it's an image that I wouldn't feel particularly proud of. However, let's compare it to the film version. As you can see again, with the film version, we've started to lose a lot of detail again. And I know it's not the lens because I've used this lens on my digital camera, and optically it's actually very, very good. The problem here is simply that we're exceeding the resolution limits of film. Now for a change of subject, and here's a portrait. This one was taken with the digital setup, and although it's not going to win me any photography awards, I think it's acceptable and there's no major problems. Here's the film version, and the first thing I notice is that it looks a bit overexposed, but that's not really a big problem. That can be changed in post-processing. You'll also notice that softness again, but again it's not necessarily a problem. Some lenses actually have a soft focus feature, because when you reduce the sharpness on portraits, it can make the portrait look more appealing. With both lenses, there's very little geometric distortion. When I did post-processing, I didn't make any changes for barreling or pin cushioning, and on both lenses, all of the vertical and horizontal lines look straight. However, what you will notice every time is the softness, the lack of detail, the lack of definition, and the extra grain with the film version. Here's another example. Digital first. Look at the colours, contrast, sharpness, details, lack of grain, lack of noise. And then compare it to the film version. There's not really any comparison. This shot was taken with the digital setup, and with the EF400 f5.6 I've never noticed any chromatic aberration. With most shots I've taken with the FD300 f4, I've never noticed any chromatic aberration either, but on this shot I just noticed some purple fringing along the top of this white wall. I'm not sure how difficult it is to see on the video, but I can see it quite clearly on my computer. This is one of my wife's paintings for the children's room. This one was taken with the digital setup. You can see that the colours, contrast and sharpness are all good, and you can quite clearly see the texture of the paper that she's painted it on. Here's the film version, and there's been a big reduction in colours, contrast and sharpness, and that texture on the paper has disappeared. Now, instead of being able to see texture, it just looks as if the paper is flat. This is actually a reservoir. As you can see, it's quite dry at the moment. It won't fill up until the end of the year when the rains come. And here's the film version, and the same comments as before. The contrast, colours and sharpness are all drastically reduced compared to digital. For me personally, there's no going back to film, and it's not just about improved image quality. I love the instant feedback of digital and knowing whether a shot has worked or whether I need to make some adjustments and take it again. And little things too. I find the level indicator on my digital camera very, very useful to make sure that the camera is straight. And with a film camera, if the camera is low to the ground, you have to crouch down to look through the viewfinder. With a digital camera, all you need to do is flip up the display and look down. With my digital camera, I don't have to record any exposure information. It's all there in the image file. When I was taking these test shots with my film camera, I had to take along a notebook and pencil and write down the shutter speed and aperture for every single shot. Not only is digital photography better in every respect, it's also free. When I shoot film, I have to buy film. I then have to pay to get it developed. For scanning, you have to buy your own scanner or you have to pay to get your negative scanned. And all of these things tend to get quite expensive. I understand there's been a big resurgence in film and a lot of people are now interested in film photography, but for me personally, there's now no going back. I hope that's been useful, and it really helps me if you subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.